It's Pastor Junior, and I'm reading Samuel, right? I'm reading the book of Samuel, First Samuel, chapter 1. ¿Y qué dice? Right, I'm reading First Samuel chapter 1, and the title of my message this morning is getting specific with God in prayer, right? Right? It says First Samuel chapter 1, verse 11. ¿Y qué dice? It says, "But if you give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of my life, all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head," right? And no razor shall come upon his head. Once again, 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11. The title of this morning's message is Getting Specific with God in Prayer, right? 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11, ¿qué dice? It says, "But if you give your maidservant a child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life." Notice that. "And I'll give him to the Lord all the days of his life," right? "And no razor shall come upon his head." No razor shall come upon his head. And why? Because that was a Nazarite vow, right? The Nazarite vow is avoiding the cutting of the hair and the abstaining of alcohol, right? So once again, a child, but not just a child, but a male child, right? And what's the title of our message this morning? Well, it's getting specific with God in prayer, right? Getting specific with God in prayer, verse 12. And it happened as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli watched her mouth, right? Once again, 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 12, and it happened as she continued to praying before the Lord that Eli watched her mouth, right? Eli only watched her mouth, right? Eli only watched her mouth. Therefore, he thought that she was drunk, right? Verse 14, "So Eli said to her, 'How long will you continue?'" Right? He says, "So how long will you continue? How long will you be drunk?" Right? 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 14. Once again, so Eli said to her, how long will you be drunk?" Right? "How long will you be drunk?" But then he blessed her after he heard her story. You might be in court this morning, right? You might be fighting a criminal case. You might be fighting a civil case. Pero criminal or civil, right? This morning. That's why I want to get this message out. But right, once again, but then he blessed her after he heard her story, right? So what's your story this morning, right? What's your story this morning? Is it civil? Is it criminal? Once again, but then he blessed her after he heard her story. Then Eli answered and said, "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant you your petition, which you have asked of him." Right? Verse 16, do not consider your maidservant a wicked woman, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief I have spoken. Right? Pero ¿qué es grief? Well, grief is to be sorrow and is to be sad. Right? Notice once again, verse 16 of 1 Samuel. This is for out of the abundance of my complaint. And why? Well, because Luke 6:45, ¿qué dice? Luke 6:45 says, "For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Right? And what's in your heart this morning? What's in your heart this morning? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Verse Samuel 16, ¿qué dice? "Do not consider a maidservant a wicked woman," right? For out of the abundance of my complaint and grief, I have spoken, right? So once again, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. What's in your heart this morning? Verse 18, "So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad." Right? Verse 18 of 1 Samuel says, "So when the woman went her way and ate, her face was no longer sad." And why? Because she meant what she said. Why? Because she meant what she said. All right? Just a word of encouragement this morning. Orale.